The state of Oregon will soon allow 15-year-old transgender individuals to undergo sexual reassignment surgery without parental consent. As you may have suspected, Fox News is not too happy about this.
If you are now, or have ever been, a parent to a 15-year-old, you know just how impressionable and fickle they can be. Keep that in mind as we tell you about a shocking new policy in one western state that would allow 15-year-olds to have sex change procedures done without parents even knowing about it. Here's correspondent Dan Springer in Oregon.
15-year-olds in Oregon can't smoke, give blood, or get a tattoo, but now they can get drugs to suppress puberty and even a sex change operation without their parents' consent, and the government will pay for it.
It is trespassing on the hearts, the minds, and the bodies of our children. They're our children. And for a decision, a life-altering decision like that to be done unbeknownst to a parent or a guardian it's mind-boggling.
The decision was made by Oregon's Health Evidence Review Commission, or HERC. With no public debate, it began covering cross-sex hormones, puberty-suppressing drugs, and sex reassignment surgeries for Medicaid enrollees in January. A transgender activist says not requiring parental permission will save lives through suicide prevention.
Parents may not be supportive. They may not be in an environment where they feel the parent will affirm their identity.
The American Psychiatric Association classifies gender dysphoria as a mental disorder. A 2008 study concluded most children with gender dysphoria grow out of it after puberty. Johns Hopkins University was the first U.S. medical center to perform sex change operations, but stopped after studying the outcomes. Its longtime director of psychiatry calls Oregon's policy child abuse.
We have a very radical and even mutilating treatment being offered to children without any evidence that the long-term outcome of this sort would be good.
We tried repeatedly to get an Oregon Health Authority official on camera to explain and defend the sex change policy, but they kept putting up roadblocks. In fact, one spokeswoman even lied to us about the medical director's work schedule. We eventually found her. Hey, Dr. Smits? Can I ask a couple questions? The Oregon Health Authority can't say how many children have been treated by the state for gender dysphoria since January. HERC estimates it will lead to one less suicide attempt a year and cost about $150,000. In Salem, Dan Springer, Fox News.
Okay, so let's break down their main concerns. So 1, they contend that 15 is too young. 2, they think that individuals who are transgender should have parental consent. And 3, they have problems with it being taxpayer funded. So hopefully as I go through this video, I'm going to address all of their concerns. Now, first and foremost, before the video even starts, before they get to their segment, the Fox host tried to really frame the debate and prime viewers into thinking what he wants. He says, you know how impressionable and fickle they are. Well, sure, teens, they are impressionable and fickle. But what he really wants to do here is downplay their gender identities. So when he says that they're impressionable, he wants you to think that, oh, this is how transgender people come up with their gender identity. They see people like Caitlyn Jenner and say, wow, I want to be like her. Maybe I should transition. But that's not the case. Now, he also says that they're fickle, implying that they're going to change their mind when it comes to their gender identity. But really, he doesn't understand that gender identity is a lot more nuanced than that. He really glosses over all of the nuance, and he doesn't understand gender identity. He has never maybe even read one study about transgender identity and transgender youth. So in the beginning of the segment, the narrator says that, well, teens can't smoke, they can't give blood or get a tattoo. So it should be the case that they also can't have this life-altering surgery. But this is really a false equivalence. You see, smoking, giving blood, getting a tattoo, these are not the same thing as having sexual reassignment surgery. See, I'm an individual who I have multiple tattoos, but when I have the desire to get a tattoo, it's not something that can actually affect me from a psychological standpoint. However, if it was the case that I was not happy with the gender identity that I was assigned at birth, this would have a ton of psychological consequences, and it could potentially be even harmful to me. They want viewers to think, well, look, these are kids, they're impressionable, they're fickle, they can't get tattoos, they can't smoke, so why let them have sexual reassignment surgery? So now, Jen Burleton, who's a transgender activist who was interviewed in the video, who I actually met multiple times, she's a fantastic person. She's saving lives with her work. Now, she states that parental consent is important because it could potentially save the lives of kids whose parents don't approve. Now, this is a point that Fox News doesn't even touch on. They completely disregard it, and I'm surprised they even included it in the video. Now, what they don't really realize about this is that if you're an individual who is transgender and you want sexual reassignment surgery, which, by the way, that's the more bottom surgery. If you want sexual reassignment surgery, it's not that easy to just go and get it. Teens aren't sitting there like, well, today I think I'm going to go to the mall. When I come back, I'm going to stop at Starbucks and get me a coffee. And then I might stop by the clinic, depending on how I feel, and get sexual reassignment surgery. That's not the way that this works. The way that it works is that they go through years and years and years of counseling until the psychiatrist that they have actually feels that they are confident in their gender identity, and then he or she will allow them to have sexual reassignment surgery. It's not that easy to where if you decide that you're transgender on Tuesday, you get a sexual reassignment surgery on Thursday. That's just not the way it works, but they really want to fearmonger and get you to think that. Now, they cited a 2008 study who concluded that most children with gender dysphoria grow out of it after puberty. Now, is it the case that this study, and others as well, actually prove that some children do grow out of their transgender identity? Well, sure, there is, but there's also a ton of other studies that say the opposite and contradict this study. Now, it's also the case that other studies say that once children reach puberty, well, then at that point, the gender identity that they have at that point usually sticks with them for the rest of their lives. But what's true is that we don't actually have definitive research, so they can't state that most children grow out of their gender identity because the sample sizes of all studies thus far, they're just not big enough, so we don't have the evidence to make that type of widespread assertion. So now there are new studies that indicate that transgender youth don't grow out of their gender identity, most of them that is. So Huffington Post explains, over the study's 6-year course, all the young adults were satisfied with their physical appearances, and none of them showed any regrets about transition. The researchers found that GD was alleviated, which is gender dysphoria, and psychological functioning had steadily improved. Well-being was similar to or better than same-age young adults from the general population. Improvements in psychological functioning were positively correlated with post-surgical subjective well-being. Although both trans men and trans women appear to have benefited from the clinical approach, trans women showed more improvement in body image satisfaction and psychological functioning. Now they add, significantly, the researchers believe that early medical intervention was not the only factor determining a successful outcome. They also credit a comprehensive multidisciplinary approach and a supportive environment as vital to helping these youngsters. So now throughout the segment, they also cite Dr. Paul Mchugh, who works for Johns Hopkins Medical Center. Now, he called Oregon's policy child abuse, but the first thing that I thought when they brought this doctor on is, of course they're going to bring this doctor on. If you know anything about Paul Mchugh, this is an anti-gay, anti-trans activist. He's a huge bigot and he is very, very biased. So let me tell you about Paul Mchugh. This is an individual who refers to homosexuality as an erroneous desire. He also filed an amicus brief arguing in favor of Proposition A on the basis that homosexuality is a choice. That tells you a lot more about him. He also describes post-surgical trans women as caricatures of women. That's just grotesque. He says the Catholic sex abuse scandal was not about pedophilia, but about homosexual predation on Catholic youth. So in other words, he thinks that homosexuality is the same thing as pedophilia, and that all the Catholic priests who molest a lot of boys, well, they weren't pedophiles, they were homosexuals. This is what he thinks. This is a doctor who thinks this way. So he's also against sexual reassignment surgery, even for transgender adults. So he's just anti-choice, he's anti-freedom, and he's a transphobic bigot. So of course they're going to have him on because he's going to cite their talking points that they want. So what's the bottom line here? So, Fox News is ignorant to the facts. Nearly 50% of transgender people have thought about suicide, and 1 in 4 have attempted suicide. Now, with this fact in mind, hormone treatment and sexual reassignment surgery, this is a matter of life and death. So when you think about it in that light, you'll see that, yeah, if that's the case, if someone's going to kill themselves, if a teen is going to kill themselves if they can't get sexual reassignment surgery, I don't think that parental consent is necessary. Now, there's a lot of other studies I'm going to cite to you. A 2014 study found that hormone treatment therapy led to significant reductions of anxiety and depression after 12 months. A 2013 study finds that those on hormone treatment experience less stress and have lower blood cortisol levels, which is a key physiological marker of stress. Studies from 2009, 2011, and 2013 showed that cosmetic treatments, such as top surgery, where they either give you breast augmentation or they remove the breast with transgender men, this improves sexual and psychological well-being. Now, even though we don't have that much data on the long-term effects of hormone treatment therapy, a 2011 study argues that the benefits outweigh the risks given the evidence that we currently have. So if we take this into consideration, if it comes down to a teen's mental health, they should not have to have parental consent. Again, this is not something that, oh, well, I'm just going to go ahead and get sexual reassignment surgery tomorrow. It's going to make my parents so mad. This isn't the case at all. It's a matter of life and death. You heard the statistics. I'm not going to cite them again because it really is depressing. So now I want to address their last point. Their problem is that it's taxpayer funded. Well, here's the deal. Treatment for this is extremely expensive, and it's also very necessary, as the aforesaid studies have indicated. So if it saves lives, then this is something that's necessary and very well should be taxpayer funded. So Fox News really needs to get their facts straight, because this is something we have to take serious.